Okay, so tech company Nothing, which was launched a few years ago by OnePlus co-founder Carl Pei, launched a new, more budget-friendly sub-brand called CMF, which, for those of you who are unaware, is a design term for color, materials, and finish. Now, my interest in this brand was especially peaked a few days ago when my YouTube sub box was filled with a bunch of videos from my favorite content creators talking about the CMF Phone 1. So I did a bit more digging, I went onto their website and I saw a bunch of glowing reviews from creators that I genuinely do really respect. And having watched all the videos, having gone through all the marketing material, and even after sending an email to Nothing themselves via their press email, which by the way they did not care to respond to, I think the CMF Phone 1 is a little overhyped. Here's why. Before I dive into my personal thoughts, let's get you all up to speed with Nothing's CMF Phone 1. The CMF Phone 1, or just Phone 1, which I'll refer to it as from now onwards, is Nothing's attempt at a budget smartphone, with a particular emphasis on the Indian market. The phone currently starts at Rs 16,000, but if you have a look at the Flipkart page, it shows an MRP of Rs 20,000. The main standout feature that you've probably seen everybody talking about is the swappable backplate, which complements what is, in my opinion, a very smart looking design. There's also a thumb screw at the bottom right, which can be used to attach currently what is 3 first-party accessories, all of which are now on screen. The rest of the phone is actually spec'd on par with most of the other phones in the space. Actually, let's speedrun this. 5000 mAh battery, 50 megapixel rear camera with depth sensor, a 6.67-inch AMOLED display, 6 or 8 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of expandable storage, a MediaTek Dimensity 7300 5G chipset, 16 megapixel front camera, and the latest version of Android 14 with 3 years of promised software updates. Right, here's the issues. The phone's positioning, in my opinion, and people's opinions of this being a game changer in the space. Well, from the point of view of somebody who is the target demographic for this, it is truly nothing special. Plus a couple of other things I think Nothing should have focused on while designing the CMF phone. Let's start by taking a look at where this phone is positioned. Ignoring what I think is an introductory discount of Rs 16,000, at Rs 20,000, this phone is up against some stiff competition from the Realmes, the Pocos, the OnePlus Nords, IQs, and even Redmis of the budget phone space, just to name a few, each of which has their own pros and cons. If you're serious about buying the Phone 1, which in all fairness is not a bad phone, it is absolutely decent and absolutely serviceable, you're probably also intrigued by the differently colored backlit options that they do offer, and also the different screw-on accessories too, hence the CMF name. The problem lies with the fact that none of these are included in the box, not even a single backplate. You get the option that you pay for, and if you want to change the backplate, you'll have to buy that later on. These are all add-ons. And this, in my opinion, is the fundamental issue with the CMF Phone 1. Because as highlighted in the ads, which show the different interchangeable backplates, you're basically encouraging people to spend more for what I think is essentially a gimmick. Each backplate costs Rs 1.5k, with each accessory costing 800 rupees. Remember that you'll also want to purchase the charging brick if you don't already have a fast charge capable one, which is also 800 rupees. So if you just wanted to customize the color of your phone and maybe add a kickstand, which I think is really cool by the way, you're being set back an additional Rs 3.1k, which brings us to 19.1k rupees. Now this is all hypothetical, and being realistic here, most people would just probably spend the money on the charging brick. But when your smartphone brand is based around customizability and you don't even care to include a free case, as they like to call it, in the box, you're running yourself into some major trouble here. As it stands currently, at a discounted price of Rs 24k, by the way spec'd identically, you can get yourself a Nothing Phone 2A, which has a longer support period, has a useful feature in the glyph interface, an ultra-wide camera, along with other conveniences such as NFC. And honestly speaking, if you're someone that's willing to spend 19.1 thousand rupees on a phone, the prospect of a phone that's essentially by the same company, which is more feature-rich and better, would be extremely enticing. Essentially, by pricing the CMF Phone 1 and Nothing Phone 2A as close as they are, I think Nothing might just be cannibalizing their sales numbers here. Right. Horrible pun aside, let's talk directly about the customizable backplate of this phone. While cool on paper and even in practice, I think the main issue for me with this is the way that CMF have marketed it as a case. There's only 2 issues with this. It's not a case, and it's made out of plastic. Let's start with the plastic material first, since that is a durability concern. Pocket sand and other particles are a major cause of scuffs and nicks on phone screens and even unprotected glass back phones. Having a plastic back marketed as a case not only exacerbates that, since plastic scratches much easier than glass does, and ultimately, if my assumption is correct, you'll find that the back of this phone is more scuffed than the screen of this phone after extensive use without an actual case. Then there's the fact that this is actually not a case. Any slightly thought out, well-designed case would have a raised lip around the screen, as you can see here, which is designed to take the first impact of a drop, and while it doesn't alleviate drop damage 100% of the time, it does of course make a big difference in the long term, where it offers some sort of protection to having a worse crack or no crack at all on the screen. The Phone 1 has a backplate which covers the sides and back of the phone, but does not offer any screen protection. So at the very least, one will have to buy a separate phone case and screen protector once the built-in plastic one inevitably gets too scratched after 6 to 10 months of use. And it's this that pretty much relegates this whole backplate thing to being just a cool gimmick rather than something that's actually useful and is something that actually makes a difference while buying a phone. For a company that's nascent, CMF have really gone all out with their celebrity and influencer marketing, which I really respect and commend them for. Using someone like a Rashmika Mandana in the ads, while supplying everyone's, including my favorite tech creators, with special kits containing the entire CMF ecosystem, is basically a perfect way to garner attention in my opinion. The real issue lies when you look past the hype and just look at the phone objectively. When you strip the swappable backplate and accessories away, which you can in this case because they're absolutely sold separately, what you get is a decently spec'd par budget phone, which lags behind in one key area compared to most of its other competitors. It obviously doesn't help that influencers are using terms such as game-changing to describe phones like the CMF Phone 1, when the actual segment in itself is so stacked with so many competitive phones. Speaking of which, I thought I'd give you an idea of how stacked this segment is, as someone who daily drives a Redmi Note 10 Pro from 2 years ago, which we bought at Rs 18k, so same price range. The Redmi actually holds up decently well specs-wise even today, obviously losing out in terms of the processor with a Snapdragon 732G, which is literally 4 years old this year, versus the much newer year-old MediaTek Dimensity 7200 of the CMF. The display is another area where the CMF wins out only on peak brightness, while both have the same advertised general use brightness levels. But then again, speaking based off of the Note 10 Pro experience, both are more than adequate to view stuff off of in outdoor conditions. Both have basically the same battery capacity, charging speeds, display refresh rates, and from what I've seen from other people on YouTube, similar battery lives as well. They have the same RAM, storage options, and screen sizes as well. The CMF supports 5G while the Redmi does not, but lacks NFC, or near field communication, which means that someone would not be able to use a feature such as tap to pay with their CMF Phone 1. The Redmi does have this while also having a headphone jack, which I cannot tell you how much I've loved having. This isn't suddenly meant to be a video praising the Redmi and dunking on the CMF or anything, but the whole point of this segment was just to show you how stacked the segment itself is, with a phone from 2 years ago still being decently competitive with the phone that just released. And when you have a look at the newer phones on the market such as Realme's Narzo 70 Pro or Poco's X6 5G or so many other competitive phones from so many other different brands, you really get a picture of how stacked and how hyper competitive this market is, which is why I think the CMF really needs to improve in one key area. Now that you know the segment that the CMF is in, this would fall in the price range of being most teens, including myself's, first smartphones. So, in order to gain some perspective of what people my age would be looking for in a smartphone, I decided to ask my friends what their deal breaker in a smartphone would be. It wouldn't come as a surprise to many of you watching that cameras was the most common answer. Well, depending on your age, of course. Given how most people my age are obsessed with capturing most moments of their lives, a solid hook for most people would be getting a phone that can deliver really good social media-able shots while having a really feature-rich camera. And this is exactly where the CMF falls behind just that little bit. Firstly, the CMF is a one-camera system. Being one camera system, this means a lack of options to begin with. It also lacks in-camera stabilization, and if you look at any camera samples from the CMF, as shown on screen right now, you'll see that they lack some punch and saturation in photos and just struggle with skin tones, which is a problem and a deal breaker for many people my age. It becomes even worse when the competition has a strong set of cameras, mind you. Heck, I still love my Redmi Note 10 Pro camera, which has 4 cameras by the way. And although some of the camera modes are gimmicks, the ones that do actually matter produce some really pleasing looking images. And raw pictures out of the 64 megapixel camera look absolutely stunning. Also, the Redmi has a great Pro mode, which supports 4K log video recording, which is something I'm using to shoot this video in fact. And you know, it's for reasons like this that I really love the Redmi camera. So back on track now, and this is how competitive the market segment is, with so many great phones boasting so many great camera systems that people just love. And so if CMF really wants to make a dent into the market, this is something that they're going to have to work on. And here's the thing, I'm not saying that they cannot improve image quality over time. Heck, most of this would just probably be software optimization and tuning the algorithms to take photos and videos better. But when you start with a fundamentally limited package, there's only so much that you can do. And honestly, in its current state, I think this is probably the biggest deal breaker for many people about buying a CMF Phone 1, once you look past all the hype and changeable backlights. I honestly feel CMF should have focused more on their camera system, because in my opinion, their software skin on Android, which is Nothing OS 2.6, is just probably one of the cleanest and sharpest looking on the market in general. If you really want to make a dent in the budget segment here, after having spent so much money on celebrity and influencer marketing, I think this is the one area that they should have really focused on, because a killer smartphone system would be one of the greatest pull factors for people my age. Either that, or at least make the removable back have some purpose other than just pure cosmetics. Because for how easy this phone's back is to remove, it is near impossible to perform a battery swap, given that the battery is non-user serviceable. Imagine if they made the battery user removable, as most batteries used to be in smartphones of the early 2010s. This would be a major selling point in my opinion, as this would mean that one could spend a very small amount and buy a replacement battery, and thus replace the battery of their phone every few years, and avoid the wait at a roadside repair angadi after every roughly 2 to 3 years when phones' batteries go kaput. Look, as much as I like Nothing as a brand, and as much as I acknowledge that the CMF is a decent budget phone, I think the things that I've highlighted in this video are genuinely what are holding the CMF back from being the instantly recommendable thing that some people are saying. I wish that they gave the cameras a bigger emphasis to just complete the basics. I wish that the batteries were made user replaceable. I wish that it had NFC for crying out loud. I wish that they at least included a backplate or accessory in the box instead of making them just purely add-ons, in order to give people that experience of what's being shown in the ads, amongst the other issues that I have raised in the video. But ultimately, CMF's biggest problem, and probably the reason we're here to begin with, is Nothing themselves, with the closely priced, better proposition that is the Nothing Phone 2A. But that's for Nothing to dwell on themselves when they inevitably launch the CMF Phone 2 in the future. Until then, I'm Abhinav, Dileep, and thank you so much for watching.